Hello vinyl community, it's Andrew back once again. It's been a long time since I've made any videos, so I thought it was high time I got the camera out again. My record collecting has still been in full swing since I last spoke to you. I've bought hundreds and hundreds of albums since I last made a video, but I thought I'd do a video of some of the records that I've bought over the last fortnight or so. I went to a record fair week last Saturday. It was only a small one, there wasn't a great deal there. I couldn't really find any albums, so I started to have a look through a few singles, and I did come across one or two singles that I fancied. I don't normally collect singles, so it's quite different for me, but these are the ones that I've got. Got an original copy of Go Now by the Moody Blues, and that was nice to get that in the original orange Decca packet. And I've got Creedence Clearwater Revival. This one's called Down on the Corner. I don't know too much about them, but I do remember that song, and that's on the Liberty, the Blue Liberty label. Then I got a record that I had when I was very young, but it just disappeared over the years, and it's Love Grows With My Rosemary Goes by Edison Lighthouse, and it was nice to get the blue and silver Bell label, the original Bell label. Then I got Get Back by the Beatles, but I actually got it for the B-side, which is Don't Let Me Down, which is a great track from the Beatles. It doesn't appear on any Beatles album. It is on the Blue 67 to 70 compilation, but it was nice to get that on a single. And then finally I got Standing in the Road by Blackfoot. So again, this is a record I had many years ago, but disappeared over the years, and it was nice to get that one back again, and that was on the Jam record label. So that's it for the singles. Now I'll go to the albums that I've got. Now I'm quite into folk music at the moment, and I got this album by Magna Carta called Seasons. I'm not sure, but I think this might have been their first album. It's a bit like Steel Eye Span, that sort of thing, but with male vocals. It's a little bit more, not so many sort of individual tracks. It's more of a concept album, and it basically goes through all the seasons of the year. Very, very nice. Liked it a lot, and it's got a nice gatefold sleeve. That. And this one's on the white Vertigo Swirl label, which was quite nice to get that on the original Vertigo label. Then went to some 70s rock. This one's by Sad Cafe. It's called Thanks to Ra. Very English sounding title there. They tend to be just noted for one or two singles, but they actually made quite a lot of albums. I think I've got around about 7 or 8 of their albums, and they are a really good band. Very, very rock orientated. I think the singles they got were quite sort of slow ballads, but they are sort of more a rock band really. And so if you ever see any Sad Cafe albums, they're well worth investing in if you like sort of 70s rock and roll. And that's on the Black RCA label. Then from 1979, this one's by Rachel Sweet, and it's called Fool Around. Stiff Records were sort of trying to introduce sort of alternative artists like Mickey Jupp and Lena Lovitch and Jonah Louie, people like that, Reckless Eric, and Rachel Sweet was one of these. She was an American, she was only 14, and she made this album for Stiff Records, and being 14, her voice is sort of quite childlike, but there's some really good songs on here. Very sort of typical of Stiff Records in those days, with with Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe, and they're very much in that sort of vein. Some great tracks on here, like It's So Different Here on Cuckoo Clock, and Wildwood Saloon. They're particularly good tracks on here. And this one is quite nice because it's on a mint green Stiff record label. Then this was a blind buy. This was by somebody called Tom Johnston, who I didn't know who it was. It was only in the pound bin, so I thought I'd give it a go. And he turned out to be the lead singer of the Doobie Brothers before Michael McDonald took over. When Michael McDonald joined the group, he sort of took over the lead vocals. So you'll hear Tom Johnston's voice on probably the first 5 or 6 Doobie Brothers albums. So if you like them, you'll definitely like this. It's very much in the same vein. This one's from 1979, so it's a little bit later, but very strong material and well worth a listen if you like that sort of music. And that's on the Warner Brothers label. Another group from the 70s, Spirit. This is a much later album by them. This is called The 13th Dream, and it's very good. It's not really like their early stuff. It's got more of a 1980s twist to it, but again, very strong, very good album, very worthwhile listening to if you ever see this one. And this one's on the Red Mercury label. Get it right way round. And get it right way round. That's on the Red Mercury label. Then this one was a little bit of a disappointment. This one's called The Geese and the Ghost by Anthony Phillips. He was a founding member of Genesis, but he left after the first 2 albums, I believe. And looking at the cover, I thought this was going to be more folky, sort of medieval type music, but in a way it is, because it's very acoustic, but it's actually a bit boring. I thought it would be a little bit more like Griffon or something like that, but it's actually sort of meandering guitaring, which it doesn't really go anywhere, so it's a little bit boring. So I was a bit disappointed with that one. And this one is on the Passport record label. Now, I'm a big fan of Joe Walsh, whose career took him into the Eagles eventually, later on in their career. But he did have a career of his own, solo career. But before that, he was also in a group called the James Gang. And these records are quite hard to find in the UK, because I don't think the James Gang ever were popular here. And I've been looking out for their albums, and I did come across this one. This one's called Your Album, and I think it was their first, and it is really excellent. It's sort of like southern rock, southern American rock style, and if you like that sort of music, a bit like the Doobie Brothers actually, then you would definitely like the James Gang. This one's in quite tatty condition, but it is so hard to find that I did actually buy it, and it does play okay, but if I ever came across another copy I would change it. But this one on the ABC record label. And then I got another one by the James Gang. This is called Passing Through. This one's actually after Joe Walsh left, so I think this was their 4th album. Joe Walsh had left by then, but having said that, it's still a very, very strong album. Sounds really just the same, to be honest, and again, very, very enjoyable. So again, if you see that one around, but this one also is quite rare to find in the UK. Again, that one's on the ABC label. Another blind buy was this one by Roger Hodgson, In the Eye of the Storm. That's what this one's called. And I didn't know who Roger Hodgson was, but he turned out to be the lead singer of Supertramp, which as soon as you put it on, you can tell straight away. Very much like Supertramp, very, very good record, very strong material on here. So again, if you see this one, grab it, because it is very, very worthwhile if you like Supertramp. And this one's on the A&M record label. I've always liked Electric Light Orchestra, and I saw this one. This one is early release from them. This is ELO2. This is the 2nd album. This is after Roy Wood left, but they still hadn't sort of worked out their style, but it's sort of much cruder than the sort of sleek pop that they produced in the late 70s. This one is actually an American copy, so it's got a different cover to the British version, and it's on the United Artists label. It's got things like Roll Over Beethoven and Mama on there, so you may be familiar with a couple of the tracks on there. but I really like this early ELO stuff, so I was very pleased to get that. Then this was a compilation. This is a French compilation called Heavy Rock, and it's got tracks from Thin Lizzy, Def Leppard, Black Sabbath, Rush, Status Quo on there. Slightly later tracks from all of those artists. The Black Sabbath is after Ozzy Osbourne left, but very strong material. Good listen, because it's a nice mix of tracks on there, so that was well worth it. It was only £1 as well, which I thought was a bargain. And that one's on the French Vertigo label, sort of like a painted label. It's not paper in the centre, it's sort of painted on. So that was quite nice to see. Then the group called Silent Running, they didn't have a great success. This is their second album, a little bit like Simple Minds, around about that time. This is 1987, and this is their second album. Very, very 1980s sounding, but pretty good. I think they deserved to do better than they did, but anyway, that's the way things go. So it's a good listen. If you like 80s rock, very sort of synthesised rock, and that one's on the Atlantic label. Then I've got the Golden Hits of Sandy Shore. This one is a compilation from the 1960s. This is before Puppet on a String, thankfully, so that doesn't appear on here, because every greatest hits or anything I've ever seen of Sandy Shore always has that track on it, and it's sad that she's sort of tarnished with that song, because the rest of the songs on here are very swinging 60s, very good tracks on there. There's always something there to remind me, and Girl Don't Come is on here, and you know, it's a good slice of 60s pop, so that's well worth buying. And then this one's on the Marble Arch record label, which was like a budget label for Pie Records. Then completely different, this one's by Clifford T. Ward. This one's by a singer-songwriter. This one's quite hard to get hold of. This is his first album, and it was released on the Dandelion label, which was what was his name? John Peel. John Peel ran the Dandelion label, and it's very much like what you'd expect from Clifford T. Ward. Very strong material, and that's on the Dandelion label. So if you ever see that and you like Clifford T. Ward, it's well worth buying. Then a group that I should know more about but don't, it's Argent. All I know is the title track of this album, All Together Now. I do know that song. I don't know much else about them, but I saw this and I thought I'd better get it so that I can hear more from them. It's quite a nice gatefold on that. And this is from 1972. This one, so it's quite old. And this one's on the Yellow Epic label. It's one of those where the record comes out of the inside of the record. That's on the Epic label. Quite tricky to get in and out, these sort of sleeves. So I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of that. Then going into some more soulful things. This is Stylistics 2. It's got the hit I'm Stone in Love With You on, which actually I think is the weakest track on this record. It's a very, very good album. The Stylistics tended to have sort of romantic, slushy sort of songs, and they had lots of hits, but you find on their albums that the rest of the tracks are quite up-tempo, funky, soul type songs, which actually are much stronger in my opinion. And this is a really good album. If you ever get a chance to listen to this, you'll be quite surprised. It's a really strong album, so that's another one I recommend highly. And this one is on the Avco record label. Then a familiar artist, Dusty Springfield. This is a compilation of some of her early singles. In the 60s they didn't tend to put singles on albums, so when they amassed enough singles they would produce an album. And this one's got the hits like I Only Want to Be With You, Stay a While, Wishing and Hoping is on here. This is an American copy, which is quite nice to find. Tend to find just the British copies, but this is the American one, and it's on the slightly different Phillips label. Now a group that I think is quite well known in America, but not really well known at all here. It's by a group called Pablo Cruz. It's sort of like jazzy, rocky, soul, sort of Mexican influence rock, really. With a name like Pablo Cruz, you think it's soul, but it isn't really. It's more rock, I would say. Very, very good band. This is a particularly good album. This one's called Reflector. It is rated probably highest of all the albums they've produced, and there's some really good strong material. Again, if you see this cheap, grab it, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. Oh, that one's on the A&M Records label, usual A&M Records. Sticking with the soul aspect, this one's by Brooklyn Dreams. This one's called Sleepless Night. Brooklyn Dreams tend to be known more for the backing singers to Donna Summer, but they did release some albums of their own. And one of the tracks on here is Heaven Knows, which was a big hit for Donna Summer. If you're familiar with that song, you know that Donna Summer sings the lead vocals, and then there's like a second vocalist on it, which is one of the group singers from Brooklyn Dreams. On the copy that's on here, it's the other way around. So the singer from Brooklyn Dreams takes the lead vocal, and Donna Summer sings the secondary vocal, which sounds quite strange, really, if you're really familiar with the other version. So that was nice to hear. And this one is on the RCA, the Orange RCA label. This was a good pickup. I found this in a 50p bin. This is Natalie Cole. Natalie. This was in 1976, so this is a little bit before she started having a few hits. It's not disco and it's not soul. It's sort of pop soul. Very accessible, very nice. Quite impressed with it. Much better than I expected. And this one is on the sort of salmon pink Capitol label. Oops, I can't get that back in. And last but not least, I've got this double album. This is in the two originals of series, and this one's by Roberta Flack, and this is a compilation of her first two albums. The first one is called First Take, which I'm told is probably one of her strongest albums, a very good album. And then the second album is called Chapter 2. So I was really pleased to get this. I haven't listened to this yet, but it's the only Roberta Flack albums I've got. So that was a really good pickup, and it was very reasonable as well. I only paid £4 for that, and it's in very good condition. And both the albums on here are on the blue and orange Atlantic label. Right, that's it then. That's my latest find. So I've got plenty to go at and play. And well, thank you very much for watching, and I'll make more videos very soon.